Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Keepwize with Keepingly. And today we have my co host with us. Hi, Amira.
Hi, Daniel. Missing you guys. It's been great to be on the sidelines and watch, but absolutely happy to be here.
Oh, well, we missed you a lot. This is season two. I think you missed like two episodes. So there was some technical glitches the first episode, and then there was an episode, kind of last year. So, yeah, really happy to have Amira back and in full swing. So, Amira, how has life been for the duration that you have missed us?
Yeah, it's definitely for technical difficulties, but I'm glad I'm able to technically be and everything's working. Things have been great. I get to continue to do the work that I do, and I have that honor and privilege, and of course, being a mom. But I don't know much if people really know what I do. I mean, I think they know what you do, right? You're out there building the world and creating a new opportunity, but right?
Right. Yeah. So Amira, then let's start. Let's tell the people who Amira Raveneau-Bey is. So let's
Yeah.
kind of dig into a bit of your backstory. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Okay. That's a broad question, but
Well,
I'll
let's
try to
start,
give
let's
it.
start from way back in the beginning.
Ooh,
You know,
I'm gonna go way back.
what where did you start in this whole housing question and this housing journey? Can you kind of define that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think my career has just been centered around housing, probably in college. When I interned for Citibank back in New York, um, and I think that that is really where my career and focus is really around like financial health as well as real estate kind of came abroad. So I originally started working for Citibank. I was an intern, then I graduated and went into the management associate program. And the global MA program was really around helping young career builders be able to get the opportunity to see different parts of a bank and be able to be a contributor. So I got to work in community relations. I got to work closely within the financial districts back in New York. And I also got to work in branches and around them and supporting them and understanding what does it mean to build a financial institution and help consumers, helping people think about their money, but also helping them get into their homes. So that was my first taste of learning around it, and it was critical. I call it chapter one of my life because it enabled me to understand what are the consumer challenges and what are some of the things that they face when they're just not only building their assets but trying to build and get into a home. That led into I was on a team. I was brought into a team to do mergers and acquisitions at the time, and we bought a bank in New York. And I helped be around like how do we ensure that it's a seamless experience for customers. And so I worked on the operations side of the house, and then I ultimately did a bit of traveling and visited all of our Citibank offices and landed in California, where we have a smaller footprint but a mighty footprint. And again, trying to serve consumers of all places and be able to support and help them. Um, and then that led me into kind of understanding tech and understanding what are people doing in tech. And that kind of opened the foray where a friend of mine's like, hey, there's this small startup. And at the time it was small, called Trulia, and they need to build out their San Francisco sales team office. Would you be interested? And I said, this sounds like an interesting opportunity. I don't know. It seems like a small company. Like, how could I be impactful there? But what I didn't realize that that was the beginning of chapter two for me, which was I was able to take all of my big corporate company building, access to resources like no other, and then find the pieces of that and bring it to Trulia. So if we wanted training, the question was, okay, great, we want training, build it. If we wanted data sets, if we want ops, if we wanted anything. And at Trulia, we were on a mission of creating transparency so that homeowners could see and be able, I mean, it's nothing now, right? Everyone has that. Everyone goes to a Trulia or Zillow or any kind of website to like check out a house first, but that wasn't the case then. People still had to rely a lot on getting flyers, postcards, working with real estate agents, and even if you weren't fully engaged and ready, it was not as easy. You drive around on Sundays and Saturdays and look for houses to go in. And so we were embarking on that and building the platform and attracting consumers so that they can come and get that information, and more importantly, also for agents, for them to be able to get ready to buy homeowners and be able to partner with them. And so we built the San Francisco sales team office. We were the small one. And then we ultimately built a Denver office, which was over 450 people. Then it was sales, it was operations, it was service. We did a ton of amazing things there. And I was a part of the IPO ringing of the bell, which was exciting. And chapter two really launched for me this interesting way to realize how important it is for startups to have ideation, have ideas, and bring really talented, smart people to kind of build this new world that didn't exist before. And so that kind of forayed into the other parts, which was working at a company called NerdWallet, again around financial transparency for consumers and building a partnerships team. And then also an open door where we were revolutionizing the way people buy and sell homes, and working with many of my colleagues there around like what's the customer experience and how do we ensure that customers are delighted every part of the journey, and how do we ensure that our company was able to support them. So that was, chapter one, chapter two. I can go to chapter three, but I feel like I should pause for a second because your question was how did I get in? And it was just one thing led to another, led to another. And it was, I think back, it's just been an amazing opportunity to follow the breadcrumbs. Sometimes you don't plan the breadcrumbs. They just kind of, you follow them.
Fantastic. So, what I have learned from your story is that basically we started with banking, we flipped to housing, we went back into banking on the bank and the education side. Then you got back into housing again at Open Door. So you have, had this revolving one foot in between banking and housing for a lot of your career. Is that right?
Well,
Did I
yeah,
encapsulate?
yeah, a little bit. I think everyone knows Citibank was clearly banking, but I think of all those other companies, I think they really see themselves as like, I would say truly it thinks about, real estate, prop tech, transparency. Neuralic was really around like fintech because it isn't a banking platform, but it's really around bringing financial products and services to consumers so that they can make easy decisions. And so whether they didn't facilitate the bank, but what they did do was all of credit cards, mortgages, loans, student loans, personal loans, any kind of financial transaction that a customer went through, it was about bringing the right marketplace. That was my job was who's in the market and how do we bring them to our customers. And so I would definitely say for like a normal person that's making their financial decisions, like I've been a part of amazing companies that have really thought about how do we continue to bring that information to consumers that make it really easy and with technology you know, powering that.
Fantastic. And the reason why I asked the question the way I asked it was really
Mhm,
I wanted to kind of shed light on everything that you've done really has been around the lens of transparency in terms
mm,
of creating that type of visibility for consumers, whether or not it was in banking or in Trulia or in Nerd Wallet, etc. All of those things, I think that I would encapsulate that a lot of it is about transparency, and I think that even our interaction when we met, I would say, it was in chapter three of that whole story,
mhm,
was about you trying to create space again. And so you got back into real estate. I think that this chapter three, and maybe getting a bit ahead of your story, but really about, again, providing homeowners with what they need. And our interaction, somebody introduced both of us, and, I'm building what we're building at Keeping Me, and you were over at the Home Dispatch. So,
mhm.
what was the Home Dispatch about?
Yeah.
You were building there.
Yeah. So, yeah, you kind of alluded chapter three, which is where I decided that I wanted to bring my entrepreneurial spirit and building and crafting a solution I thought consumers needed. And when I was actually it was like my first day at Nerval my first day right before I started at Nerval that weekend before. That Friday evening, I took off work. I ended work at one company. I was about to go and I decided to get myself a spa appointment because I was like working so hard and I didn't have any downtime. And literally, when I was leaving the house on the way, parked the car, about to turn off my cell phone, I get an emergency call that said, "Your house is on fire." And, I live in an urban area. So I was like, you mean someone broke into the house, right? They're like, no, 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 this is a fire. I'm like, smoke alarm? Like that sounded crazy. I was like, that can't be true. No one's cooking, no one's home, the kids are at school. So I went back and I drove up to seeing the fire department in front of my house, water spewing out of my kitchen window. And literally, I don't even recall. I just remember seeing it. It was surreal and trying to stop my car, but forgetting that I need to put it in park. I was like in another trance. And then a neighbor walking over to me and said, put the car in park. I just remember them like kind of like saying, put the car in park. And I put my car in park. And then I just got out and I ran and like, this is my house. What's going on? And unfortunately, I mean, things happen. The dishwasher had a spark. It was, apparently an old, but it was a top brand dishwasher that things happen. And it was like some weird spark that happened. And the spark caught on fire. And so it was literally a ball of fire in my kitchen that ultimately, luckily, the smoke alarm. So I'm a big believer in everyone having a smoke alarm detector, of course, now. The smoke picked up because of the contents that were in the fire in there. And then because of the water damage, they had to hack it out of the house. There was water in the first floor of the house and smoke and lots of other things. So that was like the moment. And then what I had to get into work mode in my brain was like, okay, what are the things we need to get done? Secure my children, my family, but we couldn't live here. So it was about 9 months. We were displaced and we were moved into a rental home, another part of town, and in the Bay Area here in Oakland. Rockridge. And we lived there for 9 months while we had to go through the process of insurance and redoing and cleaning and the chemicals from plastics in the house and pulling that away and making sure it was safe and cleaning and rebuilding our kitchen. So we didn't have that luxury for the first 9 months. And what I felt at that time was that I did not have support to make such big decisions in my life. I felt really hard to project manage. It felt really hard when someone was asking me about, colors of palettes of wood and carpentry and tile and putting it together, right? And it's one thing when you're like planning for a kitchen remodel, right? And you're like Pinteresting and figuring these things out and you're dreaming your way to what you want. It's a whole nother thing when life happens and you were forced to do it. And I was starting a new job. So as someone like me, I get really deep into my work, particularly the first 6 months, because I got to make some big decisions or changes. And so it was literally having concurrently at the same time while being a wife and a mother of two small children. And so I got very lucky. I was actually frustrated and complaining with another mom of a family of friend group. And she just happened to tell me about someone else who was another mother who was a designer who wasn't working right now. And she essentially helped me project manage. I love Excel spreadsheets. She helped me do that. She helped keep it on track. And she was just like a guiding support. And without her, I would not have been able to make all the decisions that I wanted. And still, I felt really rushed. I wish I knew about it. I wish I knew that earlier in the process. And so when I reflected about where I cared the most about, I cared a lot about making sure that when homeowners are making decisions about their home and taking care of their home, that they have a trusted person or partner or tool that they can use. And that birthed the home dispatch with a lot of ideation. It's funny, I didn't even think about that originally first. It took a bit just when you're finding an idea that we wanted to build a piece of technology that you could use to be able to kind of help you think about, inspire you, remind you of things you needed to do, kept you on track. But we built that with the idea that you'd have technology and a human because we thought that both of those things needed to merge. And so that was the premise of the home dispatch, and had some amazing team members with me as we built and tested and ideated and brought to clients this product idea that we brought in as a small startup company.
Fantastic. And I remember the first time I heard your story, even about the fire and how that experience. I think that a lot of why we started this podcast together was just because I thought that a lot of what your personalized experience was like going through that fire. I think that a lot of people think that, oh, it can't happen to me. A lot of us, we think, oh, well, that's for the neighbors or that's the person down the street, but that's not me until it happens. And I think that, just re-listening to your story just now, part of what I had like questions, I'm like, should I stop Amirah now? But anyway,
Go on.
one of those questions was like, what was so you're walking into your house, it's on fire, or the fire, engines are in front of your house, etc. And so you are walking into your house. What is your thought process at that point in time? What are you feeling as a homeowner, number one, but now seeing everything that you work for just kind of underwater? How was that feeling? What was that to deal with mentally to process that?
Yeah, literally water, because in order to get rid of fire, you need water, and there was
Yeah,
lots of water in the house, dripping. It was I felt, a bit of shock. There's shock in like how there's confusion, right? Because in my mind, I'm like, it's a dishwasher. Why do we have a fire? Like, I think about the questions people ask me around that, and it's always the same things that I thought. They're like, wait, did you say your dishwasher? Because you don't think about fire and dishwasher. But reality is any appliance, right? You learn things through experience that, you don't turn on appliances if you're not in the house. You don't, I don't put on appliances actually at night anymore because of when the firemen explained to me, right? Like what they have had. It's actually, he was like, well, it's better in the day than at night. I'm like, I still have a fire. But his point was, typically people put it on before they go to bed. And when you put on before you go to bed, if you don't, most people don't have smoke detectors. They come in because either they smelled something or someone potentially saw something, because it's easier to see fire at night than it is in day because you couldn't see it from the outside. And typically you're rescuing a family because they are trapped, because at that point it's too far, right?
yeah,
So yeah, like any appliance that you have, probably should have put the dishwasher on before I left. My husband will beat me up for that one as much as he wants. He doesn't beat me up, but he was always like, we should never do that. Shouldn't do that, because we would have been home, right? Um, how big the damage would have been, I don't know. Still would have probably required the fire department. And then the other piece is the other thing that I always thought was funny. He was like, "Oh, you should get." I'm not going to mention the brand, but you should get this brand, right? This brand's really good. I was like, "That's a brand I had," right? So there's an idea or belief that because you're getting high quality or a brand that is great, it is great, but everything has a shelf life, right? And so part of the drama was the insurance was like, well, it's a great brand, it should have great warranty. Well, it did have great warranty and never had a breakdown issue. It was just something sparked, right? Like you could not have planned that. So everyone was like trying to figure out like, well, who pays the cost? I'm like, it's my house. Like, can we figure this out later? Send a check. Let's get this project going, right? So it doesn't even matter about your brand. So there's just some safeguards, but you feel like you are just. I think I was in shock probably for about a week, because then immediately at that point, right? Like having great insurance matters, because my insurance company came in later a few hours, and then they said, okay, well, I didn't know. I was like, well, I'll mop this up and go to bed. And they're like, no, your house is not safe to live in, right? Like, because in my mind, I'm like, we got to get back to normal. I have children. They're about to come home. Like, I got to get my children. And he's like, no, this is toxic, not safe. Plastics, that were in the dishwasher melted. Um, and so it looked like cobwebs were flying around the house. And if you ever seen cobwebs, right, like it's a little string. Well, it wasn't cobwebs, it was the plastics disintegrating because of the heat. And so, and it was in any door that wasn't closed had that. So every bedroom had it. If the drawer was open with the kids with their t-shirts, that drawer now was contaminated. So having that person was super helpful, because he was like, yeah, your kids shouldn't wear any of these clothes. I'm like, what? Like, again, like things you don't even see the impact. So I am a high believer in like, I'm thankful that the people that showed up, the firemen that showed up, I'm thankful for all the people. And I asked lots of questions, right? And I just said the things that were in my head, because they actually validated to tell me that I was actually wrong, because these guys are experienced, right? Um, Between the firemen who told me like, hey, this damage is kind of weird the way it's done, and protect yourself because insurance companies are going to want to mitigate. And I didn't think about that. they're going to mitigate their costs. And it's like, I honestly think you need to like redo your kitchen, but that's probably not what they're going to recommend. But you should figure out how to do that gently. To the insurance telling me, yeah, you can't stay here. It's not safe anymore. And yeah, so I would say as a homeowner, absolutely ask all the questions, say the things in your head because the experienced person will tell you the truth.
Wow. So every layer of the story that drops, I feel a bit more conflicted by the story, Amira. I mean, I'm thinking, so, and I know we never, personally ever dove into some of the details about, well, the dishwasher blowing up and things being all about. So I'm hearing some of this for the first time, folks. And so just even imagining that everything blew up and so the plastics are all about, it's weird because now you're thinking, and I love the questions that you ask, even I guess in your own, just trying to get back to some sense of normalcy. It's like, can we do this? Can we do that? And those aren't the things in your home ownership journey and experience that most of us would ever think of asking. And which is why I even with constructing this episode, I wanted, because again, the truth bombs and the knowledge tips that you're dropping here is so invaluable. So just think about after a fire, you shouldn't be in that, because things like smoke inhalation, asphyxia, people can die, who has asthma, all those kinds of things aren't things you should really be thinking of. But you, in your own mind, you're thinking, this is my home. These are the things that I've worked so hard to acquire, how do I, restructure? How do I think of life? So, okay, now the insurance company comes in and they tell you, you can't live here, we'll figure this out. What was that process like? And I think that question is really important right now in 2024 because of all the things that are happening in the whole insurance landscape. So depending on where you live, you're in California, I'm in Miami. We're living in two extreme states in terms of what is happening in the insurance industry, whether or not rates are doubling and tripling in some instances. How was your insurance experience in terms of that whole, the fireman gave you certain advice and, telling you to, you should redo your kitchen. What was that process like for you? So now we are removed. Amirah has, she's figured it out. So how does that go after?
Yeah. Well, let me just go back once. Yeah, I'll definitely go to the insurance piece because it is prevalent now. I mean, I know someone who the insurance dropped him and they're like not far. And I'm like, really? Obviously, insurance has the choice to say who they have as clients. But I just got to go back to too, like when the situation happened and I'm like, where do I stay? I had to stay at a hotel, right? So we stayed at a hotel, which luckily the insurance covered, which ultimately was like our house. We stayed there for like almost a month because we had to figure out like the next place. And that is not fun to stay in a hotel. I don't care how much free breakfast they give you.
With two kids.
With two small children in elementary school. And oh, by the way, that we don't have any clothes. So so that weekend was, and luckily community matters. I called friends and like, can you watch my kid for the weekend, please? And of course, everyone says yes when they hear your situation. And people will rally for you. So don't be ashamed to share your challenges, or at least a few people. People will step up for you in ways because we want to be helpful, I think, in general. But to that point, someone worked in insurance. So, sometimes we have people in our lives and they're just doing their due and we enjoy them for whatever reasons. But like by sharing our stories, it actually empowers us or others to give you access. Because we all, I think ultimately most people want to be helpful. And that landed in me talking to an old friend of mine who I forgot worked in insurance. And more importantly, not just in like sales, she worked in claims and had a career in claims, which means that is the department that's responsible for reducing spending money when a claim happens and be as efficient as possible because the company can be profitable. That's the point of insurance, right? It is to save you, but like to some degree and help you. And so that was really helpful because they had me ask questions of things that I was reading in my contract, but I didn't know what that meant. And so that was like life changing for me to make sure that I was not just making sure I was getting covered in a place in a hotel and I could figure out the bill and it wasn't coming out of my pocket, but like, how do we live? Like that was my initial was like, no one thinks you're going to be homeless until you're there, probably there. And technically, right, we did not have a home. So you stay at a hotel for a day or two. It's like, well, that can't be the game plan when now you're a file on someone's desk who has no urgency to move any faster because they got a caseloads, right? And so you call on Monday and they're like, yeah, we're busy. We'll call you on Thursday. I'm like, you don't understand. I'm staying in a hotel. Like, I don't want to be here. And so being an advocate for yourself, that was really hard. I think that's what also made the process for me taxing because I'm trying to be an advocate to making sure that I had the things that we needed. So you got to think basics. Do you have a place to stay? Is it a clean and safe place? Right? We got a place. It was great. It was a wonderful place we got. We were able to get into a home because we had the children and we needed bedrooms and all those things. Do you have things to eat? Do you have clothes that will last you? Like, you don't want to buy a whole new wardrobe, but the reality is we didn't know when we were going to get our contents. And the reality is we did not get our contents for probably about 8.5 months because things they have to take your products they it has to go to restoration process, which is a whole thing that I didn't even know existed, right? You see companies like ServPro and others driving around your neighborhood, but you don't know what they do. They take the stuff, they take it to a processing and they try to clean it, and then they tell you whether they could or couldn't do it, and hopefully your insurance covers that. And then the stuff that you can't, you're like, these things are going to be, they're not salvageable, they're not up to standard. And so then you got to figure out replacement value of all your items, of pictures, or go to the warehouse with a mask and then submit that to the insurance for someone to approve it. So it took literally forever to do that. And then there's all right, well, do you need new cabinets or can we remake you cabinets? So like the cabinets are dark and they're old, and who's going to remake them? And that seemed expensive. Like, we should just get brand new cabinets. That makes sense to me. Well, do we? What type? Right? And so it was a full-time job, which became very overwhelming for me, which is why the person who was able to help me kind of helped me think through and manage my expectations of like, you know what, these are cabinets. I did research. These are the cabinets that meet the quota of what they're looking for with the standard size. Here's something that I think, here are 3 stores I go, let's go look at them. Like, boil that down to me, give me my top 3 options, and then I go out and spend my Saturdays doing that. I could do that. But to do all that process beforehand, really, really reliant on me or me just saying, sure, whatever. And I imagine that most people just say, sure, I'll do whatever because they're just trying to get through the finish line. So yeah, the insurance process was difficult. And I would say, if you can ask lots of questions, right? And don't be afraid when you're reading something to say, well, you said that this means, flooding, of contents. Can you give me an example? That's my favorite one. Can you give an example of like what that would look like? And recognizing that these people are going to be like, you're just like one of many people they're trying to get through. And I get it, right? But do not advocate for yourself and say like, look, if this is not the right time, we can talk in an hour, but like, I need to know these answers, and try to get all the answers you need so that you can be an informed consumer to make the decisions and leverage other people in different industries, right? Because a contractor might know from a different lens of things you should be asking for versus the insurance company versus the plumber. And so I think you're required as a homeowner to ask everyone all the same questions so that you can figure out what's the right answer for you.
Wow. And the thing about it, I would say, that is so taxing about all of that is at least you had people who you can plug into to, be able to help you through this journey. What happens to the homeowner who this happens to and they don't have the network to tap into to be able to get the correct answers or to see them through this journey? And, just listening to you recount parts of your stories, the process is exhausting just listening to some of those parts. So just imagine actually going through and living through this. And then how did your family deal with this? Because you have 2 small kids, you have a husband. How was that whole process for everybody else in your household involved? Because you starting a new job, so that's even more stress. So that's compounded, and then everything else. How was that process for your family members during this period?
Well, 2 things. I do want to say I am a big advocate of, I didn't know the plumber, but I just called the plumbing. I just like literally was like, Google plumber near me and ask questions. What else? What are they gonna say? No, I can't answer the question for you. No. So I say this is where I say like be an advocate and be bold and be brave.
Yes.
I didn't know a plumber, but I knew that
Um,
if I called a plumber, they might be able to can potentially help me. So that
yeah.
was that. Family wise, I would say, when you're in it, my husband is a rock for me. And I remember that night, it was a crazy night that we finally got into our hotel and we didn't have the children. And we were like, I immediately was like, all right, what are the things we need to get done? It's like, oh, we need to get up tomorrow morning and we need to get clothes. We got to go to Target and get some like underwear, like get some underwear. Like, oh my God. Like, oh yeah, you need underwear, you need socks. Like, I'm going through this list. And we went to a restaurant to eat because where else could we go near the hotel? And he just looked at me. He was like, through sickness through health, right? Like the ride or die. Here we go. And so we kind of had this moment of like, you know what, we'll figure it out. And it's helpful to have a partner that gets it and understands. But of course it's taxing. It's taxing
Yes.
for everybody because it requires everyone to do more than you ever wanted to do. And I think the children were resilient, and we knew that if we made, oh, we're in a hotel and you can have a waffle in the morning, right? It does get tired after the fourth day. They're like, is this the same waffle and strawberries every day? But like, it was free breakfast and let's go to school and you got a new dress. Trying to be resilient is amazing. And I think parents get that. They understand that you want to do the best you can, as much as you can, whatever you can do. But you don't actually understand the impact of it until much later. And so I would say when anyone goes through anything that's a new change, a new shift, whatever the thing is, planned or unplanned, create space for processing it later. Because for I'd say like my son, or both of them, but he was more vocal around it. He really wanted a toy that he couldn't have anymore. He was in kindergarten. And I was thinking, I was like some obscure toy from like a carnival, right? So it's not even like I can go to like find it on Amazon. It was like, do you remember Mr. Porcupine? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, Mr. Porcupine, yeah. And I'm like Googling, I'm like trying to find images of a little stuffed animal that wasn't the right one. He wanted that one, and I couldn't give it to him. And of course, we found out after calling and trying to call the people to like can we find the stuffed animals and see, because he was crying and it was really upset about not having it. Um, it wasn't possible. It wasn't good. It didn't clear because it was soft fabric. And so we realized in the moment you're just trying to take care of your children, do what you want. But what I realized, right, is for the children, they had to they lost their bedrooms. So when they came back, we have videos of that. And it's like a moment. I remember the day we both them come back into the house and we put their stuff in the room and we tried to figure that piece out. And I remember them walking into their room and all we heard was, oh, I remember this. Oh, this was like all these memories were triggering for them of joy and happiness. And it was like around Thanksgiving time. And like for like 2 days straight, everyone was happy. Everyone was like reintroducing themselves with their new toys that were not really new, and it was less, but it was still meaningful. And they reflect, they're teenagers now, so they reflect on like, yeah, I remember that day. It's impactful for them, but I'm sure that there may be more impacts that we just don't know. And even for myself, I don't think I gave myself time to really process what that was. Because many people are like, wow, were you sad? I'm like, sad? Who has time for sad? I had a job. I had to figure out like who. I don't have that. I don't have that luxury. But I definitely think that what it did do for me was tell me that I needed to slow down a bit and just be more appreciative. And I think that took me to chapter 3 of my career, which is like, how do I show up in a way and how do I create my space, I mean, my home in a way that feels um tended to. And I think the move and the rush and just ever going was just, I was on a wheel. I never really stopped. So even when we're back at our house, it still wasn't always feels like it's put back together because we never stopped and processed what the importance of a home can be to a family. And I'm still going through that, figuring like, all right, what do we want this room to be other than like a dumping ground? It's a dumping ground.
Something good. That's
Got
hilarious.
boxes in there still. Like that's crazy. But who has time is the question. So making time.
I hear that. So after you went through this process and came back, and I love how you have framed in terms of actually giving yourself time, because I think that for me, I would say that resonates with actually why we're doing Keepingly. And I think that everything that you said, for me at least, maybe I just love what we're building so much over here. I'm like, well, if Amirah had Keepingly, a lot of things would be easier for at least the insurance process or filing or, having the documents, because again, you may not have had access to some documents in months because you're out of your home. So having a tool like Keepingly would definitely have helped you in a lot of your home ownership journey and process. Even being able to account to insurance and stuff like that, being able to make claims. But I would say that, after this moment, so you've processed it, you've done all of the work around, being away for a few months, near 9 months now, getting back into your home, and you're seeing this, and juxtaposed with chapter 3 of starting home dispatch. What are the things that you think that homeowners really need, to ensure that even in circumstances like you face, that they can be more prepared? Because again, we can never be prepared, but like at least helping us to be more prepared. Because I think that is also what Home Dispatch was trying to do, really provide that hand holding experience. But what can the everyday homeowner do to help them just be more prepared?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that helped, and I wish that we did more of it, and I think this is what your business is trying to solve for, is making it more digital. Yeah, I got a career in banking and real estate, but I am a big believer in tech, and innovation. And I think that if I did not have a screenshot of information on my phone because I couldn't get in my house, it would have been really hard. Right. And it was like, or the email that came in from them that said, here's the policy number and all that. Right. So I am a big believer of like technology as a way to be able to give you instant access to the things you need, because you will need them and they may not come in the way you planned to need them. And just like we do spring cleaning for our house and things we need to do to prepare it for the spring or prepare it for the fall, I think that there needs to be a season where we just make sure we are digitally aware of what we need to do, right? And so that is to me like one of the things I think is really important. That's why I'm on the podcast with you, right? Because I think your vision, and what you're trying to build makes sense. And I think that for many people, we don't think about it until many parts of it. So you don't have to have a fire to need this information. You could be selling your home, right? We saw that with the home dispatch. I am selling a home, but I can't, they're asking me for proof that this thing is really worth this value. I saw that in back in banking and mortgages, my house is worth more than what they say it is, but I don't have receipts. Or I didn't keep this thing up to date like I should have had. Like using technology to make sure that you are up to date, just like the healthcare industry is doing with making sure your medical files and all your immunization, right? Like, and that felt like a really big like lift for healthcare. I think we need that for homeowners and for real estate in general. I think that that's really critical, and it can make it. It seems laborious. That's what I learned from the home dispatch. Um, Most homeowners love to ideate. They love to watch ATT. They love to dream, but they don't want to do the work. Right. So whatever technology that exists that can make it easy for you to do the thing that it can feel hard. Like it's not exciting. That's what I learned, right? It's not exciting for people to do that. People didn't, what we learned at the home dispatch, people wanted to do the fun projects. They didn't want to do the things they should do. They want to do the things that, they wanted to dream. And so, but you got to still, it makes it easier. There's technology involved.
Oh, I think, Amirah, this has been the most comprehensive reason for why my product exists. So thank you very much for doing that for me and shedding a light on why this is, what we're doing is invaluable in the process. But just hearing you speak again, I think that it. I, I think it's an industry problem, and I think that we've allowed homeowners to really become very laid back in terms of all of this. And, to a lot of the instances which you just referenced about selling or, just a disaster or, any one of those circumstances, or God forbid somebody dies and you need to figure it out. Ultimately, I think that is, the exact reason of why we need to ensure that we're up to speed, because we may think that it's so much work and we're all living busy lives, but it becomes so much work in the interim or in the moment you think, but God forbid you didn't have the ability to now get what your policy number was, or you needed to wait until the weekend to even somebody to show up and stuff like that. You'd realize, okay, if I have my information and details on hand, it makes my life way simpler. And I think that is one of the reasons why I think that technology is going to be so critical in a lot of the home ownership journey and process going forward. So as we wrap up, because we're at like 40 something minutes, but what I know that you have, evolved beyond the home dispatch currently, but in your home dispatch moments and some of the things that you saw in terms of helping homeowners, what do you think, I would say, your prediction or your wish list for homeowners being true? Because your journey is, I would say, very unique. I would say I had the baby version of your journey because I've never experienced the fire, knock on wood, and those type of traumatic experiences. But having experienced it, being on the banking side, working at some of the preeminent companies that is focused on data, etc., to founding your own, how do you think that we can evolve the industry and make it better for the homeowners? Because I think that even in the journey, that is one of the things that I've realized. So what do you think, Amirah, with a magic wand, how would this industry evolve?
Wow. Well, I think it starts with putting the customer first. I don't, and the reality is everyone that works at a company is a customer, right? So making sure that companies are centered in front of like their own experience and what that in relationship and building things that are accessible and necessary for them, I think is important, number one. And I think the second is to figure out ways to have synergies and partnerships. My background, I've done, leading business development and partnerships for companies and doing things like that. There's power in companies figuring out ways to integrate to support that unique customer and to be able to support them. So I think that's a big important thing. We sunset the home dispatch. There's a lot of people in this space, right? But I can still partner and be an advocate in the space and be able to support you and what you're doing and others and how they think about the world. So, it's the line, right? Like, many hands make light load, as well as, I can't think of it, but around like putting bright people in the same room, like many people can solve this problem together if we're all focused on that one central thing. And even if it's a part or whatever you can contribute to doing that. So I think the industry really needs to think about that and prioritize clients over just the financial aspect of everything. I get it. Businesses should be around making money. Otherwise, you can't have employees to pay them to take care of them. But I do believe that centering around like that experience of the client is critical to win and to make more money. And that's part of my chapter 3 journey, which has been about building businesses and, the home dispatch and then going off and now and leveraging my experience working at these great companies and being able to help advise founders, CEOs, how to do this for themselves, which is you got to put the client first. I don't care what industry you're in. And when you see companies that are struggling or you see things, typically it's because we didn't think about the client's needs or we didn't move when the client needed us to move.
And that's a powerful note to end on. Amirah, thank you for sharing your story, because I think that everything that you've said, and you've just, given me a whole lot to think about, even as, a homeowner, a lot of the things that we take for granted, even in our own journey, and it can happen to any one of us. So it's, incumbent upon us to make the correct decisions, but also just really proactively think ahead. And I think that, and we'll get into some more of these other topics as we go along the season. What has changed in real estate, and what consumers need to be asking for. But I think that the transparency around the whole experience and the whole journey needs to be front and center, so that consumers are the ones who feel benefit, because for most of us, our home is our most important asset, and you don't really realize or think about that sometimes until you're faced with a crisis, and you have to fix this, or you have to pay for this, or something is broken. And I think that for a lot of us, it's gonna take some moments, or hopefully we can use technology to be able to ensure that we have the asset class grow, and we help our family members and create the generational wealth that we believe is part of the home ownership story. But I think that it is a powerful, and so thank you for sharing your story and being so open and transparent with us, to be able, because I know that I'm bringing up past memories that some people may not feel uh, inspired to speak about. So I'm glad that we have this opportunity to kind of delve into your story and really take the learnings from it, and become better homeowners, and create better experiences across the customer journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me here. And I'll just say this one last thought. When people feel empowered about their health, when people feel empowered about changing their careers or their lives, they take this like need to like do the right thing and advocate for themselves. And it's not that they don't know, it's that they're willing to put the effort in. I think that's the same thing with your home. When you want it to be the asset class that you want, where you want it to be the asset that gets the most from the block, or whatever the thing that drives you, you are willing to do the things that you need to do. And I think that as homeowners, it's important. You got to feel the pain enough, or want it enough. And I just want technology to make everything so much easier for everyone.
Thank you very much, and some powerful closing words. I have nothing more to add.
All right. Well, we'll see everyone next time when we get to chat and learn more from some amazing people in the industry.
Thank you.
Bye.